Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. We aren't quite getting as much coverage as we would like with the public charging providers, and I figured that I would chime in, and with my history as a teacher, I decided, well, why not just use the American grading system to give each one of the public charging providers a grade. Now, I feel like each one of these charging providers does deserve their own video. There's a lot to talk about with each, so I'm going to go over each charging provider individually. In this video, I'm going to be grading the ChargePoint network. Let's see how well they did. Now, I've created 10 categories that I'm using to grade these charging providers, and this is based on feedback from other electric vehicle owners and really the things that I myself consider most important when considering a charging provider. Now, these are the 10 subjects that I'm using to grade the various public charging providers. The first is concentration. I've spoken about this on my channel before, but it's essentially how many charging units are typically at each site. The next is convenience. How easy are these sites to access? Where are they located relative to freeway on-ramps, off-ramps, or businesses you might want to use? Next is cost. How much does it cost you to use them? Is it as much as a gasoline-powered vehicle, or is it a significant discount even from what you pay at home? The next is coverage. How much of an area of the United States do they actually cover? Are they mostly a regional network, or do they actually facilitate long-distance travel through states and regions? The next subject is distribution. How well do they cover the region that's within their sphere of influence? Next is ease of use. How easy are the chargers to use in terms of their plugs, in terms of their payment structure, in terms of activating the chargers? The next subject is growth, and this is more of the potential. So based on what we know about the public charging provider, how likely are they to grow or expand their network? Next is reliability. Now, this is hard to measure, but based on feedback and based on my own experiences, I can kind of give a gauge of how reliable each one of these public charging providers has proven to be so far. Next is speed. Some charging providers are slower, and some charging providers are faster, and some are a mix. Next is support. How easy is it to contact customer service? But beyond that, do they have any supporting apps or websites or resources that owners can use? And the final category is upkeep. How likely is this charging provider to upkeep their sites or repair units or replace units with faster, better ones? Now, one of my hopes for this video is that these charging providers actually watch them, actually read the comments below. So be sure to put your comments below, have a discussion about your experiences with these charging providers, because based on my feedback and what they read in the comments section, hopefully these charging providers can up their game and help us even more as EV owners.
All right, so let's get started with ChargePoint. The first category we're going to talk about here is concentration, or site concentration as I call it. And really this is just the number of active charger plugs that are available per site location. And one thing to note with that is I say the active plugs. So really if a charger can't split power, even if it has 2 or more plugs, it really only counts as a single charger. Now, in the case of ChargePoint, they're not the greatest at this. They have a lot of sites that are only a single charger, and in my opinion, that's not really an acceptable number of chargers to have at a site, at least not moving forward. And one of the issues with ChargePoint is their new sites, a lot of them are still limited to only 1 charger per location. Now, I'm grateful for some of them that have gone in. I've done a few trips up Interstate 15 to visit like the Grand Canyon and parts of Utah like Zion National Park. And those chargers along that route are very useful, but even being new chargers that they put in the last year or so, there's only 1 DC fast charger per site. And so for ChargePoint in this category, I'm only giving them a D. That's Well, I mean, that's technically failing. So ChargePoint really needs to do better in that regard. Luckily for the Southern California corridor that they're building along Interstate 5, they're starting to up their sites, it looks like, to 3 chargers per location. But I need to see more from ChargePoint in terms of multi-charger sites before I really give them a higher grade. I mean, they do have the occasional site here or there that has many chargers, like the NASA site that has 8 chargers in one location, but those are a rarity, and for the most part, it's just a single charger in the middle of a charging desert. Again, yeah, like I said, they get a D for that. They're just not meeting the minimum criteria, in my opinion. The next category is convenience, and actually, ChargePoint does fairly well in this regard. Most of their chargers are near businesses, and most of them are actually accessible for travel, just off of interstates, just off of freeway on ramps, off ramps. So even though they're not necessarily the fastest chargers and they don't have a huge amount of chargers per location, they're in very good spots. And so for convenience, I actually give ChargePoint a B. Now, cost for ChargePoint is really hard to nail down because they vary from extremely cheap to extremely expensive. I've done a number of charge sessions, say at the Kern Federal Credit Union in Bakersfield, where a 40-50 minute session is just a couple of bucks, whereas some of their other locations, you could be spending $15 for that same 40 to 45 minute session, and you're essentially getting the same amount of power out of it. And because ChargePoint leaves it really up to their clients, it's really hard to nail down what you can expect in terms of their cost, because it varies so much from site to site. And for that reason, I actually gave them a C for cost. Now, in terms of coverage, ChargePoint has improved, but they're not the greatest. They are covering a number of corridors in some of the more highly populated EV areas, but that's about the extent of it. You're not going to be able to travel cross country with them. And, even still, some of their corridors that they're covering are questionable right now in terms of charger reliability and availability. For that, they also get a C for coverage. Now, in terms of distribution, within the networks that they serve, again, I feel like ChargePoint is just average. They have some areas where they're really well represented in their regions, and then some areas where the gaps between the chargers are just too far to reasonably make it. A good example of this is, even though they do have chargers along Interstate 15, you can't go from Salt Lake City into Los Angeles just using ChargePoint. And likewise, even though they have chargers along the Highway 99 and Interstate 5 routes in California, you can't travel north to south using only ChargePoint chargers, even along Highway 101 at this point. With the chargers they have that are down and the slower chargers, it makes it difficult to travel from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And these are areas where ChargePoint has a presence. So their distribution, I'm also giving them a C. Now, in terms of ease, I actually think ChargePoint chargers are relatively easy to use. They have the option of both an RFID card and using a phone app. And in either case, the activation is really simple, really straightforward. The main issue is you have to actually set your account up first, and ChargePoint will pre-charge your account, and so they'll be holding money in reserve. And some people actually prefer that because it's just a single withdrawal every now and then, and you don't have multiple draws on your account for just small amounts as you charge here or there. So for ease, I'm giving them a B because, like I said, I feel like that they're relatively easy to access and use once you set up your account. Now, in terms of growth, I think there's a lot to be hopeful for in terms of ChargePoint's ability to grow. They just did a recent fundraising activity where they raised nearly $240 million. In addition to that, they still have outstanding grant funds from the California Energy Commission that's helping them to build out certain charging corridors in California. So I think there's a really good potential for ChargePoint to grow. They're also producing their own hardware at this point with the ChargePoint Express stations, and those I think will win over a lot of businesses that are looking to install high-speed charging on location. And so for that reason, I'm actually giving ChargePoint a B for their growth potential. Now, reliability. This is an area where ChargePoint has actually been struggling recently, and I actually think that it's gotten worse in recent months, because I do remember when I first got my Bolt EV, I actually found ChargePoint to be one of the more reliable chargers to use. However, since then, there have been a number of issues, especially with their lower power 24 kilowatt chargers that seem to go down way too frequently and for way too long of a period of time. And some of them are having faults, and there's difficulty getting them activated. And even some of their new sites, once they go live, they haven't been actually activating all of the chargers at one time, or the chargers have been failing randomly. And I've actually had trips where every single ChargePoint charger that I've attempted to use along the trip either didn't work at all, or it had to be escalated before it could be activated. And a lot of this has to do with ChargePoint's business model, where the businesses themselves actually have to pay to receive additional coverage and support, and if they don't, ChargePoint doesn't necessarily support them as well as they should. And for that, ChargePoint's getting a D for reliability. In terms of speed, I feel like ChargePoint has also sort of become a letdown. They still have their older 24 kilowatt chargers, which I would mostly give a pass for because they've been in place for so long. However, even some of their more recent implementations have still been using lower power chargers. And for the California Energy Commission grant, there's some of their recent chargers that they've been putting along interstate routes have also been much slower than I was hoping for. I actually think this is an area where ChargePoint is going to make a huge amount of headway in the future, like I referenced their ChargePoint Express stations, but currently their chargers are really not that fast. Like I said, even their newest implementations are still only 50 kilowatts, 125 amps. And for that, they're actually getting a D. Now, support. I've always had good luck with ChargePoint in terms of their support staff. They've usually been able to walk through whatever issues. Sometimes they're not exactly the most helpful, but they've usually been able to resolve any problems that I have. ChargePoint also has a number of different ways to seek support. They have a website and their app, so you do have options for self-help as well. And some of the chargers that I've had difficulty with, I actually have been able to activate with an app, even when my RFID chip wasn't working. So for support, I'm actually giving ChargePoint a B. So far, they've been fairly good for me. Upkeep, I think that this is an area again where ChargePoint has been sort of falling down, especially recently. I talked about the reliability already, but this is a case where it seems like once ChargePoint installs their chargers, they move on and don't really look back unless the business where they installed them actually paid for some additional service plan. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue to be the case, but right now that seems to be the impression that a lot of people have. And I'm sharing that impression based on what I've seen. A lot of these chargers have gone down, and they've been down not just for days, but some of them weeks and months. And that's just not acceptable at this point. So for Upkeep, I'm actually also giving ChargePoint a D. So what does that mean? When you actually consolidate all of these grades together, all 10 of these grades, it gives them a cumulative GPA of C minus, which, is not exactly where you want to be. They're just a tick above, in my opinion, a failing grade. And that's really not acceptable for a network that's been around for as long as they have. I'm hoping ChargePoint can focus a little bit more, get their business and their chargers and their sites in alignment. And I'm really hoping that they're one of the charging providers that we see improve the most in the next couple of quarters. So I'd love to hear what you think. Am I being a little bit too harsh on ChargePoint? Do you agree with my assessments? I think this overall report card for them is, I think it's in line with what a lot of people are feeling from ChargePoint. And hopefully, like I said, this gives them some areas where they can, improve, focus some of their energy and their money to increasing the speed of their chargers and making sure that they're kept up and they're reliable. And again, maybe expanding their sites so that there's not just a single charger per location.
I hope this video helped you better understand what you can expect from the ChargePoint network. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.